My life trajectory, my story, my experiences have taught me, my faith has taught me that when you lean into that fear and discomfort, there's usually something really amazing on the other side.
Hi, everybody. It's Linda Lorelle. I'm so glad that you took the time to tune in and join us for another episode of Our Voices Matter podcast. My guest today is Mia Mends, a powerhouse corporate executive with a heart of gold, an unparalleled work ethic, and a real determination to lift up others as her own journey unfolds. I had the pleasure of meeting her a short time ago at a Greater Houston Partnership event. Mia's on the board of the partnership, and I was so incredibly impressed with her that I reached out immediately and invited her to be a guest on the podcast. Her story is at once inspiring and instructive, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Mia is the Chief Administrative Officer at Sodexo. That's a food services and facilities management company that is headquartered in France. In 2019, Black Enterprises magazine named Mia as one of the most powerful women in corporate America. After you've had a chance to listen to or watch my conversation with her, you will understand why. So please enjoy my conversation with Mia Mends. So Mia, it is so wonderful to have you on our Voices Matter podcast. And I have to say, when we were on the Greater Houston Partnership, what was that, a little panel discussion that was happening not too long ago. And then I reached out to you and you're like, oh my gosh, I used to watch you on TV. It's like, oh man, that made me feel really good.
Yes, no, it's such an honor to be with you, Linda, really. I watched you through most of my childhood and adulthood, and you were always such an inspiration to me as not just a beautiful but intelligent African American woman. You gave me something to aspire to. So it was such a full circle moment when you said, "I want to talk to you." Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that compliment. I very much appreciate it. And I'm excited to talk to you because you, my dear, are a powerhouse. Okay. I mean, the accolades and the accomplishments are very, very many. So right now, you are the Chief Administrative Officer at Sodexo.
That's right.
But you are also getting ready to move into a new role. So why don't we start there and just share with our audience a little bit about what you're doing now and what your new role is going to be.
Happy to. So the first thing that I'll say, and we should touch on this, is that this new role will represent my 5th job at Sodexo in 9 years.
Wow.
And so I've really come to see jobs as assignments. And I think I've developed this thing they call learning agility, which means that when there's something to be done, I get in and I just figure it out. And that has been a skill set or competency that has served me well. Just for quick context, I joined Sodexo 9 years ago after being so intentional at that point in my life about finding a great company. I didn't really care about the job that I was going to do, but I just understood that alignment of values was going to be so critical and would create a foundation where I could thrive. And when I discovered Sodexo, it was a global company with focus on people. Our mission is quality of life. So in the way that we serve people, we think about the consumer experience, the employee experience. There's this notion around cultivating all stakeholders. And while we are absolutely a for-profit company, we really design, I think, our ecosystem in a way where everybody wins. And that was so important to me. There was also this deep, deep belief in the importance of DE&I. And so I just knew that it was a company, regardless of the job, where I could thrive. So the job that I took 9 years ago was a sales role in Latin America. I was asked to come run sales across 8 countries in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'd never run sales. I didn't know the business. I didn't know the company, and I needed to learn how to speak Spanish and Portuguese. I knew neither language, but my husband and I thought it was an amazing opportunity, would be transformative for my family. So we did it, and I was there for 3 years. I went from there to run a division of our business as CEO of a smaller business inside of Sodexo focused on employee experience. It was technology. I knew nothing about technology and software development. I did that for 4 years, and in between helped them buy a company. So I got mergers and acquisition experience, integration experience, and then I was asked to come 2 years ago to lead the turnaround for North America. And we were struggling with issues of competitiveness. And at the time, our CEO said, I don't have a job description. I don't even know what we're going to call you. But there's a lot to be done. And I leap of faith. I didn't think I was quite ready. And I say that every time, Linda, I'm not ready for this job, but the company has believed in me. And so over the last 2 years, my role has grown. It started with sort of transformation, strategy, competitive intelligence. And then I started to accumulate functions like new functions like sales, revenue operations, product and marketing, corporate social responsibility, and then a P&L business that I am so passionate about called Sodexo Magic. This is our joint venture with Magic Johnson Enterprise. Magic Johnson is a majority owner in this venture, which designates Sodexo Magic a minority-owned business. And particularly in this moment when companies want to do business with minority vendors, it gives us such a distinct advantage. And that has been such a fun business because it's community-driven, it's about brand building, and it's about the P&L. So we're making money. So I've been doing that job as Chief Administrative Officer for the last 2 years. And then about 6 weeks ago, our global CEO asked if I would take the Global Chief Diversity Officer position. And I have to say, I was humbled because it is a massive role and opportunity, particularly now. I know what this job conveys, what it means, what it represents. I appreciate the obligation, but I wasn't sure that I wanted it for a couple of reasons. One is, as a Black woman, I think P&L and operations experience is so important. And I was doing that, and I wanted to continue to do it. And I also thought, well, in my role, I certainly can have leverage on the topic of D&I because I'm doing it anyway. I'm an advocate for this anyway. But he convinced me and he always does, because I've known him for a long time, and he continues to create wonderful opportunities. But he said, I know you think we're asking you because you're a Black woman, and certainly that will inform your strategy and your agenda. But let me remind you, we operate in 60 countries, 450,000 people around the world, and D&I is going to mean something different everywhere. The reason why we want you is you're a business person, and we need to deeply anchor D&I in the business, and you will have credibility doing that. I also wanted to keep corporate social responsibility. I think the intersection of those roles are so important. And he said yes. And the last thing was, I wanted to keep it P&L role. And so we created a business called Impact Ventures. So it encompasses Sodexo Magic, which is an impact venture, community focused. And he said, go find more of those and create a portfolio. So I'm also CEO of Impact Ventures. And we agreed the role would report to him, where it originally reported to HR. And I just thought, if we're serious about embedding it in the business, then a direct line to you would be so important. Yeah. And surprisingly, they said yes to all of it. And so I'm jumping in.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay. So there is so much to unpack here.
Yeah.
So I love, for the young people who are out there listening to this and watching this, I love your trajectory and how many times you said, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this role, but I'm going to go for it. And you just kept building upon your skill set. Well, I'd never worked in technology before, and I'd never done this before. Well, clearly you're educated, Wellesley and HBS, Harvard Business School. So you know what you're doing. You're an educated person. You can think your way through things, but you seized each one of these opportunities, which is something that we as women tend to not do. Feeling as though you probably know what the statistics are, that, a man will be offered a job where he has no skill set or experience. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. But a woman will be like, I can't do that. What is it within you that allowed you to say, yes, I can?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, because it's something I've reflected on so much over my career, but also over my life. And I think part of it is having watched my parents, who are immigrants. I mean, my sisters and I are immigrants. We moved to this country from Ghana when I was 8 years old, in the midst of a coup d'etat in our home country. And I watched my parents, who are accomplished professionals, give up everything so their children could have more, could have a better life, could have access and opportunity. And so they really instilled in us at a very early age that we were being given a chance and an opportunity, and we could squander nothing. And so that has certainly shaped every education and career decision that I've made. And it's enabled me to lean into the fear. And I used to, particularly when I was wealthy, I used to hear this, women can be fearless. Women are fearless. And I actually think that it is okay to submit to fear. I still live with incredible secret imposter syndrome that's gotten a little easier now that I'm in my 40s, but I live almost every day with self-doubt, with the fear, with uncertainty. But what I've learned
Me
is
too. Me too.
Yeah, it's not a secret. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to own that, because I think what we do is acknowledge it and then decide we're going to lean into the fear regardless. And my life trajectory, my story, my experiences have taught me, my faith has taught me that when you lean into that fear and discomfort, there's usually something really amazing on the other side. And so I have said yes, often because there's been a gut feel. But Linda, there have been so many people in my life, I've been so fortunate, mainly white men, who when I've said I'm not ready, have said, Mia, nobody's ready until you do the job. And I remember this in my early 30s when I was asked to take on my first P&L role. And I said, I don't know anything about running a business. I don't know how to lead people. And my boss at the time, John Cheney, said, well, how else are you going to learn? Of course you're going to do it. And I'm going to support you. And I'm privileged to have had that benefit my entire career.
That is a privilege.
That
is a privilege. And I'm so happy to hear you say that you have had white men throughout your career who have helped you move to the next rung on the ladder, because that is what it takes. So a couple of times you've mentioned the importance of working in P&L, and you said, especially as a Black woman. Yeah. Explain what you mean by that. Why is that so important?
For a couple of reasons. From a professional, personal sort of skill building perspective, a P&L gives you a full view of a business, right? It's top line and it's bottom line. It's all the levers around how do you grow a business, and then the levers around how you manage a business efficiently. And I just think that there's just richness professionally in developing that set of competencies, the ability to read, a balance sheet and an income statement. That is personally and professionally enriching. But from a sort of an organizational perspective, it's where all the leverage is. It's where all the leverage, it's where decision-making happens. And so while it is wonderful to see women and people of color in senior leadership roles, and I will take nothing away from functional responsibilities, because those are important. And there are a lot of Black leaders in HR. I'm moving into D&I. I think we all know that the leverage is really in the business. And it also opens up all sorts of doors. So as I think about the board roles, the corporate public board roles that I've joined in the last 2 years, it's all been because I was a P&L leader first. It just gives you leverage. So I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission, not just to help women of color in particular, ascend to leadership levels, but to enable that in operational roles. It's vital.
And so it sounds as though you're saying that it's not traditionally a role that women of color, and especially Black women, have found themselves in or have aspired to. But it's as you say, it's the decision-making position. And that's why it's so critically important. Am I reading you right on that?
You're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's Ursula Burns, IBM, and she's since retired, but she has been up until Rosalind, who's now CEO at Walgreens. There's been a dearth of Black female leaders. And the only way you get there, I mean, they didn't get there just because, they got there because there was a history of P&L roles, Rosalind having been a COO. As you think about your career progression, it is those smaller P&L COO type roles that ultimately lead to the top. And I just think we need to have that ambition, because that is where the power is.
So now that you're about to assume this new role as the global diversity officer, is that global chief diversity officer? Yeah. How are you going to take all of this rich experience that you have and use it to take this role and the opportunity that you have to help grow your company and to help bring in more diverse thoughts, opinions, points of view?
A couple of things. The first thing that I'd say is I'm inheriting an incredible platform, culture, ecosystem at Sodexo around D&I. It really is embedded in our DNA. And it's evidenced by the fact that in the last 2 weeks since the announcement was made, I cannot even count the number of people across the globe who've just reached out to say, I can't wait to tell you what I'm doing here. And it is a grassroots, it is organic, it is employee driven. And so I've got something incredible to build on, and I'm excited about that. I do think that in this moment, particularly as a global company, we have an opportunity to lean into the notion of race and ethnicity, which is something that has been uncomfortable, particularly as a French headquartered company. I'm fully aware of the fact.
I should have asked you this earlier. Tell people what Sodexo does.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Sodexo is a food and facilities management company, which means that we do cafeteria service in schools and universities and corporations, and we also do building management. So we operate in 460,000. We have 460,000 employees, 60 countries. We serve 100 million people every day. So it's a massive operation. But we're a French-owned company, French headquartered and founded owned company. And the word race is actually legal in France for a whole host of reasons. And so I'm grateful.
I did not know that.
It is. It is. And it is that it is. Yes. And it actually, it was rooted in the Holocaust and the danger around identifying people as Jews. And so they've been very intentional that it's really the delineation is French nationals and immigrants, but they do not look at race. They do not define people as race. And in fact, this is so interesting because when I was new to the company, I was doing my onboarding in Paris. And I remember saying to one of our leaders, as a Black woman who's now living in Brazil, I'm grappling with all sorts of issues. And she said, I don't see your color. She reacted now I understand, but she reacted so quickly and so defensively. I don't see you as a Black woman. I just see you as a woman, because that's how they've been conditioned. And so we've made progress in that we are now having these conversations. And George Floyd was a trigger. And they started to discover that in places like Brazil and the UK, we have a population of Black people who just need help. They need the validation. So I'm excited that I think at this moment, I've inherited a business, an organization that is ready to lean into the issue of race. And I think that conviction now will shape the agenda for the next few years. But I hope, Linda, that what I can bring to this role is my sense of business and the operation with the real passion and the heart the humility, the sort of the personal, the soft skills. Because I think what I didn't want to undermine when I was asked to do this role is that this is a real profession. There are people that have devoted their careers. It's a real discipline. It's a real technical function. And so I got to learn that, and I'm committed to learning that. But I think the real power in this job is the way in which you enroll people in the work, because D&I is only as good as is reflected in the people in your organization. And so my job is to identify what D&I means across all the regions in the world and to come up with a unifying value proposition. And I think as we think about the business building part of this, it is also to show that D&I drives the P&L. And I am deeply determined to show that when we are committed to D&I, not only because you've got a diversity of thought, but if you take Sodexo Magic, that is a minority business, it is today outperforming Sodexo. And I want to be able to bring more evidence, right? When you invest in minority businesses and you do it well, it drives the bottom line. So I'm going to show growth. I want to show growth.
So I want to come back to Sodexo Magic in just a minute, but I want to stay on the race topic for just a moment, because you said something really interesting that your colleague was it in Brazil or another, what country was it? In Brazil?
In France. Yeah.
Who said, I don't see you as a Black woman, I see you as a woman. Now here in the States, when someone says that, I don't see color, it is viewed as a negative, saying it that way, because I mean, as you know, we're having a lot of conversations about this right now. And there are many Black people who don't want someone to say, I don't see color, because that means I don't see all of who you are. Okay. But it's so interesting to have a different cultural perspective, where in France, the whole idea of race is not the same as it is here in the States. So speak to me a little bit about that, that dichotomy and that tension there.
I find it so, intellectually, I find it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think that is what I will discover to be the richness of this role, is really DE&I is going to mean something different. And I have to consider local context and historical context as well.
Exactly.
Because I remember in that moment, I shut down. I just thought, okay, I cannot continue to engage in a conversation with a woman who chooses not to see me. I did not appreciate the historical context, because in her mind, she was saying, I just honor and value who you are as a human being.
So how did that conversation play out when she said that to you?
It ended.
Really?
It did. Because I shut down, because I thought, well, then you don't see me. You don't see me. And I could not find, and I was also relatively new to the organization, but I couldn't find a way forward, because she shut it down, because I think it created, honestly, some anxiety for her. And then I didn't know how to continue. So we never talked about it again. But
Really?
9 years later, she and I had a recent conversation. And I remember, because she and I were talking about hiring somebody in the US. And I said, we were deciding between two candidates. And I said, all things being equal, it's really important to me that we bring in a woman of color. I think it will say a lot inside the organization. And I said, personally, how wonderful to create this opportunity for a woman of color who will have a wonderful trajectory at Sodexo. And so it opened up the conversation again, where she acknowledged this, while this is a very US-centric view, I get it now. So she and I will be partners in this work going forward. But it's just I also cannot walk into these new scenarios as the ignorant American, right? My role is going to require depth of understanding, and not just in issues of race, but think about the LGBT community in parts of the Middle East, where their lives are literally at stake because of who they are. So I will have to consider the multi-dimensions of DE&I, but in local market context. And that is going to be so rich.
What a fascinating challenge, and a daunting one. My goodness, you are really going to have a lot on your plate. But I love how you sort of closed the loop on that story about having this conversation with the woman who said, I don't see your color. That's so interesting. And it just goes to show how, when we're not afraid to be open and vulnerable and talk about how something might make us feel, that's where the change and the growth and the understanding happen. But we have to be able to open ourselves up a little bit to get there. And it's not always easy. It takes courage.
You have said it so perfectly. I mean, let's talk about vulnerability, right? Particularly in the last year. I remember soon after the George Floyd murder, one of our white male executives reached out to me. And the first thing he said is, I really need to have this conversation with you. And I'm going to mess it up. And I trust you, which is why I feel like I can be vulnerable in this moment. And he said, I'm 55 years old, Mia, and I never knew we had a race issue in this country. I thought that was gone. That was civil rights. I never understood we had a race issue in this country. And it took so much courage for him to say that, but it opened up enormous conversation. But the way he started, I'm going to mess it up. I know I'm going to mess it up, but I need to do this. I need to lean into this.
This is giving me chills, Mia. This just gives me chills. I've had so many conversations and actually have done some training sessions of my own with some clients who've reached out and said, I know we need to have this conversation about race, but we're just not sure how to do it. And what so many white Americans have said is very similar to what this gentleman shared with you. One, they just didn't realize that it was as it is. They did not realize the reality. And two, they want genuinely to be an ally. They genuinely want to understand and reach out, but they're afraid of saying and doing the wrong thing. And so in some cases, they will not reach out because of that fear. Yeah. and not really having the courage to be vulnerable in that moment. Yeah. But then there are those who find the courage, and who knows how long it took him to get there. Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, however long it takes you, but the point is to be open enough and to open up our eyes and to try to understand each other's lived experience from a Black person's point of view, to understand that our white friends and counterparts, the vast majority of them have beautiful, open hearts and want to try and understand and want to reach out. They're just not sure how to do it. And they're afraid of being rejected or of saying the wrong thing to make it worse than it was in the beginning.
Yes. But Linda, that then creates enormous opportunity, I think, for business. Exactly. Because while this is very much a personal journey, it's also a collective one. And I'm thinking about what Sodexo has done in the last few weeks in particular is to deploy a set of conversation guides, which is, we acknowledge this is hard, but we're asking all our managers to lean into this. And here are, here's a guide on how to best do that, because the worst thing you can do is to stay silent. But I think organizations have that responsibility. You can't leave it to people to sort of figure it out on their own, because this is so fraught, it's so uncomfortable. And ultimately, we have an opportunity not just to expand people's level or deepen people's level of consciousness, but it is to enable and equip people to be part of the change, to be action and solution oriented. And that's the power in this moment, because now people they want to do something. Now they know, now what do they do? And I think that is also where companies and CHROs and CEOs and CDOs, this is where we can be really, really effective.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about how you have been fortunate enough to have so many white male mentors, sponsors, et cetera, in your career. I would imagine, however, that you have also had your challenges and your struggles as a Black woman coming up through two of the elite schools in the country, Wellesley and Harvard, and now being in a major, behemoth of corporate America. What is there a particular instance or something you can share with us that was a particular struggle for you as a Black woman, and how you dealt with that, and how that informs the way you are conducting yourself and leading your organization now?
Yeah. It pains me to say this, but as I reflect on some of the darkest, hardest moments in my career, the pain inflicted was typically by women, which
really,
is, and I think there's a little bit of, I've had to work so hard, I've had to overcome so much, and so perhaps there is some resistance to making it easier for others. I also worry that we also have been fed the narrative that success is binary, and somebody's success means that there's not enough space for you, there's not room for you.
It's that scarcity mentality. Yeah.
Yes. And so I have felt that, and it was particularly acute at one moment in my life where I was new to an organization, new to the business, and trying to find my way. And there was only one other woman on the executive committee. And the truth is, she undermined me at every turn. And there was a point.
Was she a woman of color, or was she a white woman?
A Latina woman.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it was so, it just escalated over time. And I would have left after the first year because of this woman, but I sought help, and I also learned how to fight for myself. Really, that's what it required. But it just reinforced for me, gave me the conviction that we have a role to help other women. And I say this every time I talk to women, be the change we want to see, right? Because the beauty is that we're also seeing more women in positions of power. And we need those women to do for us what men have done for us, because they used to be the only ones in positions of power. But then it is about having a spirit of generosity, of understanding that bringing people along and expanding the pie improves economic outcomes and societal outcomes. But I think because, one, I'm the older sister of three girls. I went to Wellesley College, that I learned how to be a good female friend and partner, that it was learned. Because I think if left to just sort of manage, given all that we hear, the narrative, the noise around us, I think we're taught to be competitors versus collaborators. And so I'm trying to teach my daughter, who's 10, the importance of being a good female friend and partner. But I think we have to teach that and continue to reinforce that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. It's learned. So much of this is learned. So you talked a little bit about your immigrant roots. Tell us more about your family and what the experience was like after you immigrated from Ghana.
Initially, so hard and so painful. At 8 years old, all you want to do is assimilate. And I remember coming to school for the first time in this country and having an accent and being teased mercilessly because I was from Africa. And, people have all this, they conjure up in their minds what it means to have lived in Africa, to be from Africa. And so I remember the cruelty. And Linda, very early on, I just wanted to be white so badly. And as a teenager, I started using bleaching creams. I just remember praying to God, I just wanted to be white and I wanted blonde hair. And so that was the struggle. And even though my parents, they had three Black girls, and they had such a sense, my parents had an enormous sense of self and confidence. And they taught us to believe that there should be no barriers other than what we put in front of ourselves. And so they also worked hard to give us every advantage. We were not wealthy. I mean, my dad came to the US as an accomplished professional, my mother a lawyer, and, they did domestic work. I mean, my dad worked at a gas station, but we also saw them work themselves back up to the top of their field. They both went to work for Enron. We know how that story ended.
Oh my gosh.
so it's been hardship, but also stories of triumph that my sisters and I have seen, experienced. And so all the negative messages that I got externally were probably outweighed by the positive messages I got from my family, from my parents. And I remember when I was going to college, I got into Wellesley, and I also got into SMU, Southern Methodist University, a great school with a full scholarship. And my parents said, we don't have the money. We don't know where we'll find the money, but you're going to Wellesley because it will expand your worldview in a way that will be transformative. And that is how my parents raised us. And so every time something great happens in my life, I'm still that kid that calls my mom and dad because I just want to make them proud. My sisters and I just want to make them proud because they gave us everything. And so I also think about that cycle. All kids need nourishment. They just need their soul to be nourished. And I got that in such a profound way as a child. And it has made everything else that has followed possible. And so I think about my role as a mom and trying to do that for my kids, but that's also my mission. And so in my spare time, I am committed to Girls Inc., Emerge Fellows program, and organizations that are committed to just uplifting young people. Because there's a fork in the road. And if you hear that you are worthless, if you feel devalued, then that shapes your life trajectory. If in contrast, you hear that you are special, that you bring light to the world, that you can do it, then it opens up a world of possibilities, doesn't it, Linda? I am that girl. And so I am committed in my work, in my profession, but also in my personal life, to be a beacon of hope and light to people who so desperately need it. But if they get it, Linda, what does that convey for society? We all should have a vested interest in uplifting young people.
I'm sitting here fighting back tears, listening to you speak so passionately about your heart and your experience and how you have taken this and how you are paying it forward and then some. We have to have an offline conversation about my scholarship fund and all the work that I'm doing there, because we're sisters here. Okay. We are truly sisters here.
I know it.
Oh my gosh. I could just listen to you. This is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because just the short time that I had a chance to hear you speak when we were on this webinar with the partnership, I could tell all of this was in you. And that's why it's like, I have got to talk to this woman because she has so much to give this world. I want to go back now to Sodexo Magic and what you're doing with the Magic Johnson piece here in the community, and explain a little bit more about how that works and how it's succeeding and the impact that it's having.
I love this business. I love it so much because of what it represents. And I wish I'd had the vision, 10 years ago when the partnership was formed, but I'm grateful to the people that had the vision. And I think initially it was just recognition that while Sodexo's business is relevant and it's certainly robust, that there was something more that we could do to convey our commitment to community. And so at the end of the day, Sodexo Magic is operationally, it's fulfilled by Sodexo. It is food services, it's facilities management. We have the same client base, but the value proposition is about community, well-being, and the cultivation of minority suppliers. So the first thing that I will say is, I call him Mr. J, Mr. Magic Johnson, Irvin Magic Johnson, but I call him Mr. J, is the most spectacular brand ambassador. Because if you also look at his own personal story and his career, the investments that he made in Black communities when businesses weren't doing it, it is this community impact is who he is. Yeah. And so he is first just an incredible door opener, right? And when we're building business, everybody wants to talk to Magic, Mr. J. And so he's helping us sort of just open doors and build business. But where I think he is so effective and the brand and our team is so effective is once we win that business, it's thinking about how do we want to show up for the community? How do we want to, we have this new tagline, serving equity in communities. I love that so much.
I love that. Yes, that is so powerful.
And so this is why I wanted to keep Sodexo Magic, because I told our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Sodexo Magic, when she came up with this new manifesto, I said, this is my D&I manifesto. Like, it just reminds us that they're inextricably linked, right? So we think a lot about, particularly a lot of our businesses in schools, is in the school segment. And I think about the last year with COVID and having to reach those communities, distributing food, because kids rely on meals at school. And so when they were sent home, we had to really rethink our logistics and our infrastructure and find ways to get meals to people. And Mr. Johnson was at the forefront of that. He's also the gentleman who will give computers to kids and fund scholarship programs. So it's just a layer on top, right? It is running a business, but doing good and being absolutely intentional about outcomes, being obviously about we're growing the business, and it's a great business that is growing. It's outpacing Sodexo's growth by double digits. But it's also
insane.
It's insane. but our KPIs are not just about the P&L. It's things like, are we nourishing kids? What do our menus look like? Are they healthy menus? Are we accessing kids? Are we ensuring the right outcomes? Kids are graduating, going to college. We're also doing this in universities. So it's another layer that has become in this moment so relevant in the ESG space. And I just want to continue to show that you can marry the two. And Sodexo Magic is the ultimate, for me, representation of that. So I'm so excited that I get to keep it.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. It's wonderful.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, you have got so much on your plate. I don't even know how you find time to sleep and parent your child. And what do you do for yourself when you take a breather and take some me time?
So I don't do that often, and that's okay. That's okay. Although most people do not believe this, but at my core, I'm an introvert. And while I love people and I'm involved in all sorts of activities and initiatives, and my work is full and my home life is full, to replenish, I need to take a step back. Like some of my best moments are when I'm just by myself. And so I try to get sleep. I don't do that so well, but when I can find the time, like quality sleep is really important. I also exercise a ton. I've got a Peloton. I'm on that thing at least 5 days a week. But Linda, I'm not going to lie. I probably derive a lot of joy out of doing work. I feel a sense of contribution when I do work. So I probably work 18 hours a day. But it doesn't feel like a burden to me.
Because you love what you do.
Because I love what I do. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like work.
It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like work. And then just also negotiating with my family. And so I've heard the words, and I'm going to start to use this. It's the work-life integration, it's the work-life juggling. But I work late in the evening, but I also don't feel guilty if I have to leave during the day to go do something with my kids or for my kids. So right now, it's working. And I feel so grateful. Linda, I live my life with enormous gratitude for choice. So I never subscribe to, I can't find out. I'm failing my kids. I'm failing my team at work. No. I have choice. I can choose to do this work. I can choose to be on the PTO at my daughter or my son's school, or I can choose not to. And it's that sense of agency is so empowering, and it overrides sometimes all the feelings of inadequacy that come from just trying to juggle it all. One day at a time. And most days are really good. Hard, but really good.
But I love that whole concept of just making the choice, and feeling empowered to live your life the way that you want to live. You just emanate light and love and hope. And so I always ask our guests to leave us with some sense of inspiration and hope for our future as a society here in the States and really around the world, because we're living in such a difficult, challenging time across multiple spectrums. So what would you say to people who are feeling anxious and concerned about what our future looks like and how we're going to move forward?
Yeah. So that is very real, and we cannot underscore enough how much we need to support and guide people through what has been such a fraught moment in our history. The emotional well-being of people should be at the front and center for business and government. And so I think this leaning into the vulnerability that we all feel and giving people grace and permission to feel it is really important. But then I also think about this, rejecting this notion of being victims. I have come to know an organization called Second Day. I love their mission and I love their motto. And their motto is, there are two important days in your life: the day that you're born and the day you find out why. The day you find out why. I love that so much, because I think it's incumbent on all of us to discover our why. And let that be your rallying cry, your call to action, because we can all do something. There are enough really serious issues to tackle in our world, and everybody can do something. And so that is it, right? Feel vulnerable, feel the concern, feel the pain, because that's all real. But then think about, what can I do about it? What can I do? And that often is a derivative of finding your why. And so submit to that journey of discovering who you are and what you want to leave behind, and then do something about it.
This podcast and this conversation and conversations like it, my why. My total why.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And see what you're doing with it. See what you're doing with it. There's so much power.
Why.
There's so much power in discovering our why. Yeah.
No doubt. Mia, I could talk to you all day, and please promise that you will make time to come back after you've assumed your new role and gotten your feet wet, and then we can catch up and see how things are going. But what an absolute joy to talk with you. Thank you so much for just being who you are.
And I want to cry. I mean, how fortunate am I to have this space with you, Linda Lorelle. I mean, this is a milestone for me as well. And and so you've given me this platform. You've done this for me. You've given me a voice, and I will continue to do that for others as well. There's so much power in it. So thank you to you.
Well, let's keep working together, and I will always be here for you. So anything you need, please reach out.
Thank you. It goes both ways.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Man, I love this woman. I can't wait to talk to her again. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you for giving Mia permission to speak and for having the courage to listen to her with an open mind. I so appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in and being a part of the Our Voices Matter podcast audience. If you've not yet done so, please do subscribe and like what we're doing and spread the word. We want more folks to enjoy our conversations and to get in on this dialogue that we're having to try and move us together as human beings. So thanks again for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.